business developers, once they know about their clients and what they're looking for, can bring that intel to us for better graphics, for better messaging and communications and RFPs. To nail it, to have the landmine statements in the RFPs that are speaking to the people in the room. Do you want to know why? Because we know who was in the room. Thank you, BD director, because they give us that awesome intel. And so those three people can truly be three amigos for your company, and they're very overwhelmed and distracted, frazzled, and likely not satisfied when they're all the same person, like sales and marketing. Sales and business development, marketing is all of that. It's a huge red flag when I start working with a company, and I try to tell them that and advocate for it.
Have you ever wondered how successful architecture, engineering, and construction companies scale their business?
Or have you ever wanted guidance on how to get more growth, wealth, and freedom from your AEC company?
Well, then you're in luck. Hi, I'm Will Forat.
And I'm Justin Nagel, and we're your podcast hosts.
We interview successful AEC business leaders to learn how they use people, process, and technology to scale their businesses.
So sit back and get ready to learn from the industry's best. This is Building Scale.
Hey listeners, it's Will here. Our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy. If you've ever listened to our show, then you know that the three pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology. So if you suspect technology is your weak link, then book a call with us to see where we can help maximize your company's IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Building Scale, specifically the Building Connection series, where I get to interview people that I know, friends, as well as new connections that I make throughout my journey through life. We get to talk about business as normal Building Scale, but we also talk a lot about life and legacy and how we're pushing towards happiness and all kinds of new and fun ideas that way. Just give you a little bit different of a flavor of the Building Scale show. So my guest today is becoming quite the closer friend, I would say. At least that's certainly how I would introduce her. And her name is Nicole Rodriguez. She is a marketing and branding powerhouse, award-winning 3 times. She's all about driving results when it comes to branded marketing, specifically in the AEC space in public sectors. She's been doing this for a while. So she's going to share some of those ideas and like things to do if you're just starting out or things to do as you're trying to build towards that CMO seat, all that fun stuff. Also, she's part of the Board of Influence, which is this thing that we started with her, Cassie Wells and Scott Franchini, who've also been on the show. And it's really, really cool. We're having an event here in Phoenix later in the spring here in May. So I look forward to that as well. But that's kind of it. I'm just going to kind of let this seep into you as it did for me. It was super enjoyable to talk with her, and I'm really excited to share the show. All right, here it is.
Nicole.
What?
It's always so good to see you. We see each other all the time now because the event that we're planning together, which is really, really cool. And I'd love to talk a little bit about that for listeners and stuff. But the first thing I'm very always intrigued is how did you get into marketing, and then specifically how did you decide, you know what, I really like construction and I'm really interested in that life, and let's talk about that a little bit.
Man, Justin, I'm going to dial you back to the days of MySpace. Does that ring a bell?
Wow, MySpace. Okay.
Yes, I'm going to take you back over 20 years ago when I had an enthusiasm born for graphic design and web development by understanding the cheat codes in MySpace and building my own MySpace with HTML. So I went out of my way to learn HTML and built my first websites through that. And that's actually how I started over 20 years ago.
Wow, that's wild. When I worked at a law firm for a long time, I built their website, which was interesting because I was like just the youngest person that understood technology enough. Like I had no training whatsoever. So it was very much like learning HTML and like using Dreamweaver to like make a website, which now WordPress and all the other ones have made this significantly easier than literally just hashing out HTML code all day. But very interesting. That's very similar to the starts of our stories. Mine went in a different direction, though.
Yeah, way different.
You just followed on with that passion.
Yeah, we're still making content, right? We're still creatives. We're still doing whatever we want, using the internet at the dawn of that time. You know what I mean? It was going from that AOL dial-up sound at school that I heard to me on, the old white laptop, the old white Mac, doing my thing, whatever I could to stay online and I don't know, to sell that work. I really wanted to be in this space and sell that work.
It's very interesting to think of how that, we say 20 years ago, right? MySpace
22.
days,
Yeah.
it is wild to think, but yet the advancements that have occurred in that time frame, and we're talking about AI now, and I can literally have a blog and then give it to Google, and then Google pitch me back a 20-minute podcast episode about it. It's wild. What occurs now in content creation? With content creation, when you're looking at a brand that you're working with, what are the secrets? What are the things that people should really try to dive into and then avoid completely across the board?
I would say dive into completely. One of my favorite ones that's difficult to do because no one really likes to do it is compare yourself to others, Justin. They teach us right now with all the wellness content out there not to compare yourself to others personally or professionally, but marketers unfortunately have to do that every single day. We have to compare our clients even to each other and the things that we're doing year over year, quarter over quarter. We benchmark ourselves and it requires a lot of comparisons. So I would say that if you're only looking inward and you're not looking at what everybody else is doing, especially streamlining, especially AI, things like that, then you're falling behind for sure. So dive into that, dive into comparison a little bit and just use the analytics, not your emotions, of course. And then,
is that, see some, obviously we have a ton of content. You're on the podcast, you're going to get a grip of content here too, just from this conversation, which is awesome and fun. Are you saying hey, just see what other people are doing and how they're ripping 60-second videos or 30-second videos and try to, taste the, be very, what is it? I was going to say taste the water, but I don't think that's a thing. You just give a lot of taste testing, essentially of saying hey, what about this headline or what about this thing or what about, what does this look like? And then obviously seeing other people doing it and other people growing as a brand or what it is, and then going down that path and saying oh, there's things here that I'm not doing that I need to at least start investigating.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the big ones would be for people to see what others are doing on social media. You don't have to be an active social media participant, poster, commenter at all, but to have your eyes and ears on it every single day is super important. You know what I mean? To see what other people are doing. The comparison can start there, honestly, with what they're talking about, who they're aligning with, how frequently they do it. And then you can actually use those metrics when you're like, you know what, I can kind of wrap my mind around maybe a top 5 group of individuals that are pretty visible in my space. I might even consider them a competitor, I would say the secret sauce there would be going into SEMrush and using a paid, premium analytics tool. We'll show you exactly what those folks are paying for, how and where they're getting traffic from, and maybe how they're achieving what you perceive to be viability in the space, so that you can get past it, so that you can grow past it and just do better all around. But it's going to take using your intuition and looking for that information to find out the people that you even want to be watching, and then using tools to teach yourself how to do better.
What's the first thing you find when you're working with a brand? What's the first thing you see that they're not doing, but it would be easy for them to do?
Not doing, but easy for them to do, I would say, like I just said, is pay for analytics, because I'll tell you the difference why, okay? You could look at Google Analytics, and a lot of people have Google Analytics connected to their website. If you log into that, it's like having a security camera outside. You can see who comes and goes. You can see who comes to the door, whatever. You can see maybe what kind of car they showed up in, what direction they go after that, right? You can see some stuff, but you can't see everything. If you had SEMrush and you were paying for that tool or paying a marketing agency to look at information for you, you would see the inside of the house. You would see once they opened that door, what rooms they went into, what drawers they opened, how long they spent in each room, and truly what they were looking for. And if they came up to a door that was locked or a drawer that was broken, because a lot of the times that's changing the experience that people are having on your website. And Google Analytics doesn't show that. It doesn't show the visitor journey that you need to know why maybe a funnel is malfunctioning, or it seems like a lot of traffic is coming to a page, but then nothing's happening. It may be a broken button on Edge. and we just don't know because you weren't looking at, the true client journey, I guess, you know what I mean, of what you're paying for. What we're all paying for matters, right? Our budgets are important to us, especially in the public sector where I work, governments, school districts and cities, counties, state agencies, the federal government. They're all trying to save money. And so they really need to see the metric on, is paying for this important? Yes, it is. No matter what, if you're a public or private sector contractor, it's important to pay.
Do you think that the average owner or whoever you're working with internally, whoever that executive is capable of digesting that knowledge? Because, maybe they're really, they're a really great operator, or they're a really great visionary, or sales or whatever they're really good at. But when it comes to like marketing analytics, that's a whole other expertise. People, like, especially when you get to bigger organizations, it's like there's just a person that does that. Like that's their sole job.
Absolutely. Yes, there's a CMO leader. Yes, a creative leader that has been entrusted to also, I guess, tightrope the walk of executive leadership as well. And that's not always something that a creative wants to do. And I've struggled with that in my journey as far as, do I want to stop or do less of creative work so that I can serve my clients in an executive capacity, train more, review reports, complete reports, sit in meetings, and things that are just not creative work that I've spent those last 2 decades doing. And so I think that that's something that people ask themselves and decide not to do. And maybe that's why there's not that, that role so often in contractors.
Well, a lot of things that we do at Spot is a lot of strategy teaching. So we're very educational, right? Like we obviously we're going to do the work for you when it comes to IT stuff or cyber stuff, but it's a lot of like, why are we doing it? Right? It's just like, you have to understand a little bit of the why, I feel like. And I just had a call with a partner that was asking about like, how do I track things? How should I track some components? And I was helping them kind of like walk through, like, this is what I would do. Here are tools that I'd use. If it's, like you said, SME Rush, or like a call rail or something like that, or a website tracking, video tracking, click tracking, stuff like that. But I feel like I was talking to them and they were like, oh my God, how, like, you are thinking about this so further advanced, or, like very, very much strategic. I feel like there's a lot of businesses that don't have somebody like that in place, specifically in the marketing side, because they just think like, I just need a marketer to send some emails or like make some pretty stuff, right? And it's just like, well, no. There's a whole other piece that it's not just like creating content or creating, if it's an ad or for whatever it is in a magazine. It's more of the, like we're doing this and we're pairing it with these 6 things. And then that is what you actually get into. This is being strategic. How can a business start thinking that way? Because I feel like they're not getting enough strategic learning, essentially.
Yeah, I would say, as hard as it is, I would shake yourself out of survival mode. Because if you're only looking into the quarter ahead of you and you think even that's far and you're not looking that 3 to 5 years, you're lacking hope. You're lacking the spark, you're lacking the fire. And also did when I was younger in the corporate world, I kind of felt like I need to do today's task. And then a couple months maybe in advance is what I was looking at events and feeling very overwhelmed with my commitments. And I was lacking hope in myself and for my company and vision, because I wasn't brought on board in a transparent way into the C-suite right away to be like, you're a part of this. You're a part of the growth. Wake up every morning inspired because what you do can impact your income and our future and blah, blah. I had to tell myself that. And every once in a while, I got it from places like a really cool podcast like this or SMPS. I got little doses of inspiration to remind myself that I am a pillar. I'm responsible here. We could really be in the multi-millions more year over year than they ever imagined possible if I can inspire them to do something a little bit more creative, a little bit more different, and not be in the grind, not think about the quarter that I'm living in, and be inspired by what's to come year, 2 years away. And so if a principal can do that now, then they can impression that upon their team. Maybe they can have that meeting with their marketer and send them home fired up, and it can start from there and they can be the steward of that fire that helps them look farther.
When you start helping a business, what's the biggest thing you have to help them get over? Obviously, like, hey, start looking at analytics. We talked about that. Cool. But like, it's almost more like an emotional thing. It's not necessarily like, oh, you need to start pushing out an email every week or something. It's more of like, I need you to start thinking of it this way. Like, I need you to start getting to a place where you're looking at this in a more strategic way. What do you find that you're like always, the beginning of your relationship, you're always trying to solve?
I would say one, my direct and personal relationship with the marketing person on the client side, because a lot of times they can be misinformed that I'm there to be they're being audited essentially in their role for what they've been doing wrong or, have been lacking in creativity before a consultant, came on board or whatever. And so I take time to nurture those relationships to let them know that nothing was really wrong. If you didn't know what you didn't know, that's great. But right now is a perfect time for you to shine in your role because they're investing in marketing, so we're going to work together. And I always try and smooth that over right away so that they know that my life's ambition was to have my own company, and no company's offer ever in the world, I think, will take me away from what I'm doing. And so I have zero interest in replacing them or helping them, not work with me, to achieve their goals. So once I have that, once I feel like I have a great relationship with the marketing role with my clients, then we can work together to have bigger, better creative ideas. And then actually it's usually just them being scared about committing the time, because long meetings end up in tons of awesome creative ideas. And what happens when I recap them for you, Justin? It can feel a little overwhelming when you're scrolling through my recap emails, right? I mean, you're not the only one that said that email was too long. I will read it, or, whatever the case is, it's fine. I give all the information up front, and that's so that everybody, is involved. But I would say the overwhelm of knowing that you are going to have to work harder to meet your goals is a big mountain to climb.
Got it. First, I think communication's huge. That's hugely important, right? So if that's internally to a member of the marketing team that it may be frightened for their job, which we see that all the time. If there's an internal IT person in a company and we're coming in those scenarios, it's almost always in a co-managed way where it's like, oh, no, we're doing this thing and you are taking all of this thing. And like, where it's very much like, I'm not doing what you're doing. We're doing different things because there's so much to be done. And marketing certainly goes in that same category of like, oh my God, like you could be the person that just does ads compared to like
totally
all of the
specialist roles. Yeah. Whole departments.
All of those things. So where do you see the blend of sales and marketing from your point of view?
Sales and marketing come together every single day. Obviously, I was unaware that I would have to become a sales professional and sell marketing services when I started a creative agency. No one really put that, unfortunately, together for me, Justin, that I would have to get into sales, that I would have to network, I have to promote myself and do uncomfortable things, very uncomfortable things for an introvert creative who really imagined myself providing creative services for the rest of my life without thinking beyond how I was going to have to sell those, you know what I mean, and become an agency owner. So that being said, now that I've learned about that, and the difference between sales and marketing, I see myself so much as the support role now. When before I thought I was responsible for everything that they had to do. I was responsible. I was carrying this weight. But now I feel that weight completely released. I work so much better with sales roles now because I understand how we work together and that they need marketing and appreciate it. And that we don't even exist without them selling the projects. So we work together in every way.
I feel like I remember having this conversation because like you'll have companies that have a CMO and a chief sales officer or chief revenue officer, depending on the title which they have. And I've always said, I'm like, yeah, but like they need to be so intertwined. Like it's not to say that you can't have two people looking at the different departments individually, because I can understand that. But like they have to be so interwoven that it's like, I see it's like who is responsible for the overarching thing that they're both doing, because they both have to be playing from the same sheet of music, right? Because otherwise they might go out and pitch an idea to somebody and that person then naturally comes back to their office and then they go and look at the website and the website doesn't say anything about that idea. And it becomes like, well, they feel like they're being lied to in some way. Not necessarily like, oh my God, this is just a sleazy salesman, but it's more of like, that's not what they do. That seems like inaccurate what he said to me. So seeing that for such a long time, I'm like, oh my God, like they have to be together. They have to be on the same page. Otherwise it all falls apart.
But it could also fall apart, Justin, when they are the same person, which we just did an awesome presentation on with Cassie about sales, marketing, and business development, and how contractors really thrive when those three folks are completely different individuals. So The reason why is because if somebody thinks that they truly only have one target market, let's say, a contractor thinks they work with schools, wake up every single day just thinking about the people that are going to work at schools and completely forgetting their manufacturer relationships and the retention strategies to keep their employees. There are other two huge target audiences. So all of the marketing, should be done to employees as well, internal marketing and retention strategy, as well as your resources, your manufacturers, the logistics of how you get your product or service to your clients. That's an entirely other target audience of relationships that need to be built. And I think that where the source manufacturing products, whatever it is that you do, where that comes from, your sales manager should nurture those relationships because they're part of building the sales pipeline. The business developers should only care about the client's needs, truly what the client wants to have every single day done happen. They should only care about their personal and professional interests only. And marketing should care about the company goals, reaching the company goals that have been outlined in the marketing plan and all the different creative ways that we can do that. Should we be worried marketers every single morning about, sales and where they would come from or different strategies of how to sell the product really? No, because our sales managers should be integrated with us and, giving us creative ideas about how to sell products and all of the best ways to reach target audiences, right? We work together on that. Business developers, once they know about their clients and what they're looking for, can bring that intel to us for better graphics, for better messaging and communications and RFPs, to nail it, to have the landmine statements in the RFPs that are speaking to the people in the room. Do you want to know why? Because we know who is in the room. Thank you, BD director, because they give us that awesome intel. And so those three people can truly be three amigos for your company, and they're very overwhelmed and distracted, frazzled, and likely not satisfied when they're all the same person, like sales and marketing, sales and business development, marketing is all of that. It's a huge red flag when I start working with a company and I try to tell them that and advocate for it.
They are definitively different skills. They're fully different departments. I would totally put that in place. For me, I just think especially if it's not the CEO, whoever it is, like whatever executive, like if somebody doesn't have a pulse on the overarching umbrella of like what is happening, I think this is where people get frustrated. Like it's very frustrating. It's like, like a marketer could be doing something and it's like, yeah, but we're not going down that path anymore, or something that's just like, wait, what? Like, what? Well, sales found it easier to sell to this X, right? This demo. And it's like, well, that would be great, but like, I was unaware of this because we're not on the same page. The communication is not coming to one place. We're not on one vision. And that's where I see things go wrong. And I agree with you, like trying to have one person do all the functionality of that's impossible. Like
it's impossible.
Doing one of those departments all by yourself is already Herculean. So to try to add on others, it's just insane.
Sure.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about when you get that demo, right? So knowing who you want. I feel like a lot of businesses, they come and they say like, well, especially when if they're starting and they're growing, they're like, well, I could do business with everybody. I could help everyone, right? And then that can become a trap. It's not to say that you can't do things that way, but what we've seen at Spot is like, we want to be very specific. We want to be industry focused. That's for us. Location focused doesn't matter as much for us in IT, but like when we look at like, hey, we want to be the AEC leader when it comes to IT and cybersecurity. Like we keep pushing towards that and like we're attacking that every day. What do you see when you take people that are like, hey, like what's your demo? Is it just so broad that like this is very difficult to speak to directly, to your point of like, hey, I want to have those key, sentences or, those knockout, phrases that's like, wow, it sounds like you're talking directly to me. I think that first step to that is like, well, who is that demo pretty specifically? If it's industry or if it's something else, because like, otherwise it's too hard because talking to all humans is like, that's an impossibility.
It's totally hard, right? So most of the time people are dictated by their budget, right? They may have insane dreams about all the people in the world that they'd love to give their services to, right? But we always have to be creative within the budget, within the time and money that people have to achieve their goals. So most of the time, the timeliness of that is the issue. Do you want it done tomorrow? Or do you want it done 5 years from now? Is the whole point of outlining a marketing plan. And without the document, there's no deadline. You know what I mean? People could dream about it forever. So we truly encourage that to put some time and effort to it. You're going to need to pay for the structure of that to facilitate your mind getting all that information out of your brain and onto paper. that is the biggest hang up, is just really sitting down and putting it into a real plan and stopping talking to yourself about your goals and including the team with something legitimate and putting things on the calendar and holding yourself accountable when they don't happen, changing course quarterly or annually when you need to meet your goals, and just sticking to it instead of thinking about it.
For companies that have gone more like a sale rep, an SDR, a caller, that kind of vibe, and they haven't put a ton of emphasis on marketing just historically, but they're coming to a point where they're realizing like, man, like this isn't working, or this isn't going the way I want it to do. What would be advice for them as they're making a transition, or at least somewhat of a transition of that budget to some other functionality is lead generation is the initiative?
Well, do they have a brand? No. Have they ever had a brand? Have they ever had a target audience specific message ever before? Or has it always just talked about their services? I would look at that and then ask myself, what are they able to pull off with what they have done so far? You gain trust with Google over time based on if you had social media or not, if your domain was active and you had organic versus direct versus paid traffic. All of those things, gain trust with Google. If you've only been around 1 to 2 years and another company has been around 20 years, even with the most horrific, hard to read, broken and virus website, they will outperform you. Unfortunately, because they have been in the game longer with keywords that have been specific and visited times, unfortunately, even with a horrific backout rate. So you will have to pay a little bit more to increase, your visibility past those folks, honestly, but you can still do it in a shorter amount of time if you pay attention every single month to what you're doing. So I remember I told you to log into the dashboards and look every single time. If you don't want to do that, your marketer can, for sure. But honestly, I think that you're doing a pretty good job making your name known. Spot migration and building scale is the first and only I would think of. So you'd have to tell me in this episode, you don't have to take your time and tell me what the number one thing you did was to carve out that name for you.
One, thank you. Appreciate that a ton. I feel like
true.
it's a lot of continuing to just like push out truth. I think that's the thing I really realized. I felt like, hey, like
and
I'm
value.
just gonna just be me, and like we're just gonna go from there. Like if that works out, awesome. If that doesn't work out, at least I wasn't trying to be something else, and then it didn't work. So a lot of
That's
just trying.
Good. That's the mic drop, Justin. That's good. No one else you can be.
For sure, I completely agree. Also, a question. A lot of people ask me this because we've done PPC, Google PPC, for a long time to gain clients. It was up until 2 years ago that was like, man, like that's how we get a majority of our clientele. And now that has shifted to other channels. But when people think of SEO and PPC, like what are, and my guess is you're going to say both, or what does your budget have? But like where should they start, or what should they do, or are those good avenues to even pursue if you're kind of starting off on this, journey of marketing?
This journey, journey.
0 to 100, and it takes a lot of things that I've seen, certainly. But like, where do you kind of put those two, PPC and SEO?
Big dream journey. Everybody has it, of course. Everybody has it. Okay, so I would ask them to describe what would happen should they receive thousands of calls and emails. Because I would love to think that, my campaigns are well thought out. I've been in the game 2 decades. I'm going to bring astronomical amounts of traffic and interest to your brand if we work together. What are you going to do when that happens? And they're going to say, oh, I'll, and they'll realize that they didn't have the team or infrastructure truly in place to serve an increase in marketing and interest and response to quotes and answered phone calls and, engagement with the chatbot and all the things that their dreams have been, getting us to this point on. So I would say, do you need a receptionist? Are there things that we need to talk about realistically, logistically? Because, right now you aren't the person to make sales phone calls. And remember what I just said, it's because he's not the sales manager. He's the principal, or, the pre-construction director, or, what I mean? Somebody that's on their way out in 5 years and is looking for they're not the person to answer sales phone calls, or return them, or craft it, a thoughtful email that says, thank you for reaching out to us. We got your web inquiry. this individual is going to contact you within the next 1 to 2 days, and stay tuned because we're really excited to work with you. Have something like that going on. It will never be any of the people that I'm working with at the time. So most of the time they actually need to increase and have an HR, come to Jesus before they have a marketing, activity or a campaign investment. And if they do have those things, then we get a green light to moving forward of how they could actually fulfill an increase in traffic and interest.
So being operationally prepared. I've seen this a ton 100%. Of times.
Don't blame me when it fails.
Even with us over time, we crap, you've grown too fast, too quickly.
Yes.
That has problems. And not even just the intake of the sale part of it, to your point. Again, what would you do if you got, even 50 calls a day?
Requests in the next hour.
Yeah. Right. And I think that people also then forget, you also then have to deliver on whatever the thing that you do. If you're, if you're a specialty trade or if you're an architect, you still have to deliver on those things that you're agreeing to. And then you say, oh, wait, I don't nearly have enough people, which then that's okay, well, then you have to hire people. All right, well, that's a whole process. Do you have a hiring process? Do you have there's so many things.
So it's careers marketing now we're talking about, right? Well,
exactly,
now we're talking about, yes, the booth at the alumni fair instead of those campaigns. Yes, it makes a lot more sense when you can get down to the nitty gritty of how they're going to find success through that.
Do you find that a company that is deep with their culture are easier to market with? They have an easier time marketing.
I'd love to think that. I thought earlier in my career that family founded, business that would pull on people's heartstrings and that they were easier to work with because everybody knew each other, and were closer and had, known each other for years and were very committed. But I would say that it's not different than anybody else and that there may even be more drama and, fallouts and stuff in family-owned businesses. Honestly, it does not matter. The ones that I work best with, it doesn't matter how long they've been in business, who they're owned by, the age of the owner, nothing like that. I'm telling you, it has to do with their long-term vision and hope, and how they feel about themselves and what's possible. And that's what drives them. It totally permeates from leadership all the way down. And I feel like that's what drives them. And they could have the same success and growth in 6 months that other clients did in 10 years by just having a different spirit about it. It's pretty cool to see.
No, that's amazing. I asked this. I was just at this mentioned too. I was just at this retreat for Cultivate, and they have crazy culture. It is infectious. It's wild how much cheering was done in a 3-day stint for one another of their colleagues. It was wild. And all I thought was oh man, when you have that identity of you guys know who you are, there's no question there. Going out to market with that feeling, huge. But then also to your point, going to career fair or to, finding new, people that are going to be employees also becomes easier. But it's just because you have identified yourself and said hey, this is us. We are super, super happy that we get to help businesses and let's go. Very, very high energy. And not everybody's going to like that, which is totally fine. But that's the point, right? They will find those that really want to work with them, both internally and externally.
Yeah. And they care less about what other people think. I don't know if you follow the founder of Crumble on LinkedIn, but he loves to tell his founders' stories. And back in the day, the very first location, do you follow that and know what I'm talking about? They constantly talk about their brand every day.
Oh yeah. That they, again, brand wise, they knocked out of the park. Also business model. They're a good example of what you can do, with a thing that's just cookies. It's just we just sell cookies, but we're probably knocking on the $1 billion mark or something. Insanity.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But very structured. They know exactly what they're doing. There's never more than 9 items or whatever on the menu, right? You always know that what those 9 items are going to be pretty great. Even if you don't exactly know what they're going to be, when you go in there, highly structured process. And they're always on social media every single day, really talking about brand stories and celebrating each other, which I would literally tell every single contractor I work with, if I only had one, brand to show them or aim them with, it would be Crumble. One of my favorite things that they have, is, I don't remember what restaurant it was. It might have been a Pizza Hut or something like that. But their very first location was an old restaurant that they knew everyone's going to know what this was before. You know what I mean? They're going to know. And he's like, doesn't matter. They threw the sign up and they, invested in their dream and went forward, and tons of taste testing. I imagine them eating all their own cookies till they're ill. You know what I mean? Of course. And I'm really inspired by them. And I think that it's good to know inspiring brands. If contractors can't tell themselves right now, I would really love to be so-and-so brand, they also may not just be inspired enough. I would say go out there and look for inspiration too.
When you use Crumble, because they're very B2C, very consumer based in comparison to a contractor, right? Where it's like, unless you're in residential, like you're selling to another business, you're more B2B. How do you tell people like, hey, you as a B2B brand can have the feel of a B2C brand? That's essentially the goal that all B2B people want, right? Because it's like, man, if I could just do what they're doing, right? We say this is like, that would be so easy, or that would be way fun to do. And I feel like great B2B brands figured that out.
Yes, absolutely. Well, one is reminding people that they are still real folks at the job site,
human
office, still real. I saw Hayden Building Corp congratulate Katie Hayden for being a most recognized leader in commercial real estate. And hearing that name, I did not know that Katie Hayden was the president of Hayden Building Corp and that was a female-owned business. How have I not known that? I was embarrassed and horrified, all right, for all the titans that we know about their founding stories and such, especially the women-owned ones through PBJ, over the years. I was shocked to not know that. And that one social media post changed it, how I see them, changed how I feel about them. You know what I mean? Truly, it's crazy. You didn't know that. And now you could know that from one social media post. So just being active on there and being authentic, telling your story, it could be more impactful than you could ever realize, for the long term.
I just heard this quote in the last 2 weeks. I was listening to, I don't remember what podcast it was, but it was, you have to be willing to upset or essentially not care. You don't have to be like, crazy, let's go viral situation, but like you have to be willing to give up the 80% to find your 20%, because like that's like, if you can just be you, because like 20%, 1 out of 5 people are probably going to resonate with you fairly well to a degree. That's the premise of this. And it's like a lot of people get afraid of like, well, I don't want to upset that 80%, even though they're not really for me. They're not my people. And unless you're building Amazon, I think you can kind of worry a lot more about that 20% than the rest of the 80%.
Agree. Actually, that makes me think of the Bears Realtor story. I think it's the Bears Realtor story. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, please share.
It's one of those big ones about authenticity. It was about a guy that was a Bears enthusiast, Bears fanatic, whatever, and his whole office was Go Bears, right? Well, he ended up meeting people that he knew were not Bears fans, and he went out of his way to make sure they didn't get back to the office, that he would take them to golf, take them to lunch, do anything they could, but he just couldn't part ways with his decked out office, But every time they got back there and they realized that he was a Bears fan, if they weren't, it fell out, and he wasn't willing to part with that. So no matter what, he shouldn't have been hanging out with those people in the first place. He should have seen their jersey from a mile away, and he should have brought them straight to the office and been authentic about himself, right? From day one. So that ever since I heard that, I thought, I'm bringing people to my Dolphins office. You know what I mean? From day one, I'm letting them know that, this is who I am, and I don't want to hide behind anything or become something different to grow my business. It'll never be part of my plan. And so they're here and they know me right away.
That's, I'm literally wearing an ASU hat right now. There's another one behind me. I'm very open with my love of the Sun Devils. So much so at times, like I get like hey, I went to U of A, and then but the thing that's wild that then sparks conversation, right? Like it's just
it does. Yeah.
It's wild. And again, my examples are always silly because I'm actually, my hat's not backwards today. So like that's maybe a step in the right direction, but I'm usually backwards hat, just kind of a dude, like just a dude, and that seems to work out for me.
Dude,
like
Justin.
But I'm just I wouldn't say I'm a bro, but I'm a dude. Like I'm just a dude that is pretty positive in generality and just like to share the things that I really care for.
You are, Justin. That's true.
Nice. Let's talk about this event that we're gonna have in May 8th.
What?
Let's talk a little about this. So this AEC Growth Summit, So if you're in the Phoenix area and you're listening to this podcast prior to May 8th on 2025, please reach out. I'll put something in the show notes for a link for all that fun stuff. But we're essentially trying to give aid and add value to the space. And Nicole is one of the wonderful partners of this journey that I have. And it's going to be tons of fun. So one, come to that. But then two, what are you most excited about of this event?
Most excited about for this event is, I would probably say the caliber of speakers, honestly, because I'm excited to see Justin and Will, of course. I'm excited to see Cassie talk about modern business development, relationship gardening, because I think that that's something that's really awesome. I've learned a lot from, that program that she's doing is very powerful. And a couple of the people that we have coming in, I think are excellent, so much fun, so exciting. I don't ever get to see them. So I feel like they're the elusive, super cool people that you would really hope to run into if you were out and about, but now we're going to have them there. And so I know it's going to be great.
No, for sure. I would second your agreement on the people being there. Talking accounting stuff with Scott, as well as M&A, having an M&A panel, and doing that, and having literally somebody's going to fly in for us, which is a wild. That's I feel like we're a big shot. Yeah, exactly. Those are the celebrity fly-ins. So that, and then just bringing people together. I have obviously a deep passion for trying to help people. Like that is. It keeps everything in my life just comes back around to how do I help? How can I be impactful? I just want to make sure I add impact everywhere I go so then other people can have massive impact on their lives and businesses, legacy. And I just think of that of oh man, this is such a beautiful way to present that. I'm hey, this is about being impactful. So that for me is totally where it's at.
Yeah. And it's a good opportunity because of the executive draw. Honestly, it'll be a lot of leadership roles that are going to be giving us insight, giving us feedback for the next one. New panel speakers. You never know who we'll get next time. I'm excited to see who all commits.
I know, extraordinarily exciting. And the venue's awesome. And all this information is to come as we build out the lure and excitement for all of it. So what else is going on in your life? So obviously you're a booming business. So that's amazing. That's wonderful. Booming. Hey, making moves, making things happen. Obviously, the event you're having. What else is going on in life?
I told you that I'm speaking at ASBO in Laughlin the first week of April, which is awesome. The Arizona Association of School Business Officials. So superintendents, CFOs, business planning directors for school districts all over the state will be there in Laughlin.
Awesome.
For a 3-day conference at the Aquarius, which is a fun little dive. If you know about Laughlin, it's like a movie out there. It's like nothing I've ever seen. It's pretty cool.
That is cool. I will, if you give me the information, I'll make sure I drop that in the show notes because this episode will be out before then, as well as if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what would be the best way for them to do that, Nicole?
It would be on my website, john-delano.com. I'm sure all of this information will be in the show notes. You can call or text too. But recap reminder that the AEC Growth Summit is on May 8th. So you have to put that on your calendar now because it's coming right up.
It is. Love that. Anything else you'd like to tell the people before we say our goodbyes?
Can't think of anything, Justin. You should have given me some really cool, outro tagline or something awesome. I feel like that is the most on the spot question. What else do I got for you? Dang.
Hey, I like to leave it open. I like to leave some of these things open. One thing that me and Will ask a lot of times on the Building Scale proper episode, at the end, we always ask, if you go back 20 years, what would you tell yourself? So we can end it that way.
If I went back 20 years, I would tell myself, keep going, girl. HTML is where it's at. You're going to live a wonderful life 20 years from now with your own business named after your children. You're going to live in an awesome place in Scottsdale. You're going to love every day that you wake up. Keep going.
I love that. I love that you're just essentially pumping your earlier self up. You're like, hey, it's going to get great. It's going to be amazing. I love
She
that.
took care of me. Yes, I appreciate her.
Awesome. Well, this has been a ton of fun. I'm gonna keep talking to Nicole, but we're gonna say our goodbyes to you, listeners. Until next time, adios.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
Keep building scale.
scale.